Hello and welcome back to the Evolution with Mac and Jenn podcast. We are so excited that you are here today with us. Today we're going to talk about expectations.
So what are they?
So what are expectations? What are expectations, babe?
Well, there's a lot of conversation around expectations, but I have a question and kind of something that comes up quite often when coaching people is around kids. Thinking about what are the kids' expectations and what are your expectations. You you've got a 10-year-old right now, and I've got a 17 and 19-year-old stepkid. So there's stepkids, there's expectations in there of like, what do you expect your kids to do? And I see a lot of people that have a lot of expectations from their kids that they haven't even educated them on. What about you? What are some of your expectations that you have, or even personal expectations that you had inside yourself that you had to, kind of figure out and navigate?
That's a really great question. I really think that when I think about expectations, like I actually don't really like that word that much.
Okay.
Um, I think that I kind of like the word standards better. Like instead of having expectations, having standards for the kids and trying to hold them at a higher standard without really expecting. I mean, I do expect my son to hold himself at the standard in which I have set, but I don't really have expectations on how I feel he should react in certain situations or behave, but I have a standard for how I see it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a question for you about, and I've heard this quite often from a lot of women on one side and men on the other side. And it might be for women, it might be like your kids showing you love in some way, or doing something for you on your birthday or Mother's Day or whatever. And there's this kind of like expectation, especially if you have a boy, that he'll like do something that shows appreciation or love. Do you ever, have you had that happen? What have you, like, if you have you figured out, how to navigate it?
I mean, when he does sweet things for me, or I can like wants to do sweet things for me, I notice it and I appreciate it for sure.
So kind of reinforcing the behavior.
Yeah.
So how about, I heard this from somebody not long ago where mom leaves town and comes back into town, and like the house is a mess, right? Like it just destroyed. It's like, well, you could have at least done, something. And then it feels like you don't even care about me, or whatever, from the woman's perspective. Or a guy, if a little a boy, your son, goes out and does something that's kind of like embarrassing, it's like, you should know better, type attitude. And a lot of, I hear this quite often from men and women. And to me, I just ask the question, well, did you teach them any different? I don't, my I remember once when my son was out on the he like climbed out the window and got on the roof. And my ex-wife at the time, like kind of was freaking out about it and like, don't get mad, but hey, he was out on the roof. And I was like, and like, what's he's a boy, what did you think he was going to do? Like, you either open the window, take the screen out, you could walk out on the roof. What's the problem? And I honestly did not have a single problem with him playing on the roof. A lot of people might. I'm like, I don't care. The problem that I actually had, that I had a discussion with him about, was the fact that he went on the roof because his friends were there. And that to me was a danger of influence from friends. Not necessarily his friends were influencing, but he was showing off. And so then I had a discussion with him about, hey, you need to be careful showing off, because that's where you'll make mistakes, where people can get hurt, where and I was like, I mean, just ask me if you want to get on the roof. I don't care. And he's like, oh, so then there's no real issue about him sneaking around or doing these different things. And a lot of people are like, oh wait, it kind of, at first they're like, well, I just wouldn't let my kid do that, but then they're like, actually, like, you're kind of right. He, you know, boys are gonna boys are gonna do stuff. They just are. And you're not gonna stop them from doing that. Girls are gonna think things, do things, feel things, and that's just is what it is. Let me shut this up.
I think a lot of times when we place expectations on not just kids, but just anybody in general, like I just think that expectations um aren't really and aren't good. I think as they say
No,
that expectations actually lead to frustration because if I were to place, if we go out in public and I expect Cameron, my son, to act a certain way, and he doesn't act the way in which I expect, like of course I would get upset about it, but like you said, if I haven't properly educated him on how if I haven't set the standard, then I shouldn't really have a it's I don't really feel like it's my place to be angry with him if he doesn't uphold the standard that I had not set yet. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think the accurate expectation would be, I expect my kids to make mistakes. I expect my, especially boys, to break stuff, right? Like that would be an expectation. I would expect a little kid to at some point cut their hair or someone else's hair off, right? Like it's like it happens all the time. Like that would be an accurate expectation. However, if I spend the time to educate the kids, the children, or the child to like why we do this or why we don't do this, then I have an expectation for them to follow the rules, or they have an expectation of the consequences that I educated them on. And then they get to make a choice, and then it's just very simple. So this is one of the major failures and trauma causes that are I deal with quite often, is because the disciplines and the expectations are so all over the place and they don't even exist. So, for example, if I tell a child, you better not ever use scissors and better not ever cut it, and so I think, oh, I educated this child, but that's all I said. I didn't say anything. So then they do it, and then I whoop their butt, or I yell at them, or I discipline them in some way. Did I educate them on what was going to happen if they did it? Because if I didn't, I am out of control, right? Like that's on me. And every behavior, God gave you stewardship over the child. And so every behavior that happens around you, you have to look at and say, I did this because I could have educated sooner. Now, there's times with my kids, I see things happening and I'm like, I'm not going to educate here. I'm going to let them experience. I'm going to let them fail. In fact, I'm even going to put them into positions where they can fail unless I believe their safety is a danger. And then I also use God as a tool. I use God to say, hey, I can see things happening here. I need you to step in and kind of make sure they're safe, and kind of work your magic or whatever. And then sometimes I get a feeling where I'm like, oh, now I get to go have a conversation that I really don't want to have. But when that feeling comes in, I know that I have to go have the conversation. And it's just like, okay, I'll do it. But there's other times when something happens. For example, my son is, he's 19 now, but when he was 18, he got a motorcycle, and it's like I'm a little concerned because he drives a little bit like me, and I'm crazy, and I will not own a motorcycle. Not on a dirt bike, yes, not on the road. I'm like, nope, I know my limits, not a chance. Like I'm crazy. That thing would be sideways more than straight. So I'm just like, nope. So I'm like, okay, God, just protect him. And he gets in a little incident, little accident, learns a lesson. He's okay. He bruised his foot, whatever, but he's alive. He's safe. I'm like, thank you very much. Very happy about that. So the boys, you got to let them be. And there's a great book on called, what was that book? The distraction one, Stolen Focus. And one of the chapters in that book talks about how not letting kids just kind of leaving them to kind of figure it out in the world, and allowing them to make mistakes, shuts them down completely. It shuts down their creative mind. It shuts down their abilities. They just drone out, and it's like a really good book you should check out. So these expectations that we have, you should expect them to fail at everything, essentially, until you educate them. And then you should expect yourself to educate them and also set clear boundaries and consequences. I, for example, I told my kids when there was something going on, I said, if you do this, this is what happens. And I didn't say this, but let's just, for example, if you cut your hair with scissors, I'm going to shave your head. Okay. Make sure they understand we're communicating. You agree, you understand what's going to happen. Like how I have my head shaved, that's what I'm going to do to you if you cut your hair. Okay. Everybody's clear. Good to go. So if they go cut their hair, guess what? I stated the facts. I have to uphold them. That's a discipline that is required, that a lot of parents fold under pressure. It's like, I'm going to ground you, but then let you work your way out of it. Most dangerous thing you can do right there. Not holding the standards that you set. Even if sometimes you're like, I probably shouldn't have set it this strict, and I can see now that that was a mistake. However, you still knew that I said it there. You knew the consequence, so therefore we're gonna hold the consequence. But next time, maybe not. I'll soften them a little. Like, you can always change, but once you set something in place, and unless it's seriously like you're going to cause trauma by upholding it because you were just pissed in a moment, then you have to have a discussion about it and say, listen, I'm going to change this because I can see things differently, and this is why I'm going to do it. You're going to give them all the information. And as parents, most of the time, they have this thing of like, no, I'm right, you're wrong. That's the dumbest thing you can ever say. Your kids will discredit you like that. And as soon as they discredit you, they're defiant and they're just waiting for an opportunity. And as soon as they get out of your control or break control from you, chaos. Good luck. Whereas my kids never really had a curfew. Sometimes they'd be out in the middle of the night. They never really caused problems. They did their thing. They had a blast. They did great. They're extremely confident, very confident kids. So, you have to keep in mind that these expectations that you have are yours, not theirs.
One thing I have been kind of noticing with Cameron, or kind of doing with him, is that, like, I mean, he's 10, and he is all into, like, he thinks that cuss words are cool these days, and he like wants to cuss and stuff, and he thinks it's funny. And you know, he sometimes a word will slip here and there in front of me, or he'll ask me if he can say a word, or he'll put something on his music with cuss words, and he's like all into the cuss words. And I told him, I said, I know when you're with your friends that this is how you guys are talking with each other, but like, I would really just appreciate it if in front of me you didn't speak that way. And so I guess, I don't expect him to never say a cuss word, but I just kindly set my standard as it, like, please don't speak that way in front of me. But also, like, know that just from what I think, like, it just sounds yucky.
And I have no judgment on it because I swear all the time. I grew up same behavior, same kid. Like that stuff. So I'm like, I don't care. Let me give you a suggestion. Don't get too much in the habit of it. Try to be respectful around other people, consider other people. If she doesn't want you to, then hold the respect for that, and we're good. It is what it is. I'm not gonna judge where I'm not the example. It's pretty simple. So even if he were to go tell somebody to F off and it was publicly kind of embarrassing, I would pretty much have to just eat it and just be like, it is what it is. Because I don't care. I would rather have him competent than get worked up over a cuss word, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, same thing for me, but I just, in front of me,
Yeah.
like, I just don't really like to hear those words coming out of his mouth. So I just, I'd appreciate it if you didn't speak that way in front of me. But like, I understand that those words are going to come out when you're with your friends. And like, I mean, that's fine if that's the way that you want to talk with them, but just like with me, like, please don't.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna wrap this up real quick. The I think thing to remember, this kind of went towards the side of kids, but we have expectations of our life. We have expectations that aren't always clear between other people, because everything we do in life has to do with other people. And we also have expectations over ourselves that are really unclear without even actually understanding what's required. Sometimes we say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and then we go get up against the wall of things we couldn't see until we did part of it, and it's like now we're disrupted. And we can have a choice: either we feel like a failure or we make a justification, and both are wrong. The accurate way to do is just stop, clearly communicate to yourself, okay, this is something I couldn't see, because essentially it's a broken commitment of some sort. And anytime, in any way, shape, or form, if you have a broken commitment, you just need to address it, whether it's with somebody else, with yourself, whatever. And you just say, okay, now I can see clearly. So I'm going to look at this. I'm going to reassess and then move forward again, understanding that I just didn't have the proper education, but I'm going to go get the proper education. I'm going to make the next move. And same thing goes for your kids. Did you want to say something?
Uh, I just like it just made me think of what we were kind of talking about yesterday, or what I was thinking about yesterday. And this might be a whole nother talk, like a whole nother this could, but it was like the expectations in within a relationship. As the relationship progresses, there are new expectations um come into play. And a lot of times our expectations that we have, we don't communicate them with the other person. And it causes a lot of frustration in relationships. And I can give an example where, like, for example, like you say you and I are just dating, and I expect you to show up in a way where we're dating. You open my door for me, you take me on dates, buy me, give me some flowers, whatever.
Mhm.
But then, like, next thing you know, if we become boyfriend and girlfriend, all of a sudden, like, in my mind, there would be like a whole new list of expectations from what I would think, how a boyfriend would show up. And a lot of times, if I those expectations are in my mind, and now you're the boyfriend, and if you're not showing up in that way, if you're not doing what I think boyfriends are supposed to do, then it would cause a lot of frustration from me towards you.
Yeah.
And then it's very interesting, because then your boyfriend, girlfriend, next thing you know, you get married. And now there's a whole new level of expectations, how you're supposed to show up to each other. And a lot of times, I do think there are standards in a relationship and stuff like that. But a lot of times, if as the relationships progress and new levels come into play, it's like all of a sudden now, if in my mind, if I have all these expectations of what a husband is supposed to do, and you don't start doing that, or if I don't communicate with you, then it's like it could cause a lot of problems. So that's why they say, like, expectations cause a lot of frustration, because if we don't properly express or even notice in our minds, because a lot of times the expectations that we have in our minds don't get communicated. So it's like I may have all these expectations and you have no idea. And next thing you know, like, I am angry about something, and you're like, what? And I'm like, well, boyfriends are supposed to do this.
Mhm.
And you're like, well, what are you talking about?
Luckily, we're a little more advanced. Like I
Yeah.
can tell when something's going on, and most of the time I don't say a word. I just allow it to do its thing, and she comes to me after she kind of figures out, okay, maybe. And this isn't something that happens by any means, to a big degree with us, because we're very open to just speaking about our like our emotional, or like what we're feeling, and not in a story, but in an actual feeling. Hey, this happened, and this is what was going on with me, and kind of where I'm at. And it's very simple, because we're not triggered by each other. We're just kind of, hey, this is what I found, and we just sit there and listen, and like, okay, think about it. Don't really get worked up about it. So it becomes very, very simple. But we're also very, I would say, advanced in being able to be clear on expectations, or not even having them. For example, if something triggers me and I'm offended, it's got nothing to do with her. Nothing. Like, first off, I believe in, like, I'm personally responsible to manifest everything that I in my life, period. So if I'm doing everything I need and I'm manifesting something, it is just guidance to get clear. Or the if it's really a problem, it's going to be removed from my life because I manifest intentionally. So I'm not really worried about it. So most of the time I look at myself first, then I look at the feelings that it's causing. I look for any past trauma that I'm dealing with that's actually stimulating it from, and then go from there. But we have to remember that, like with kids, most of the how we raise them is how we were raised. And for me, one of the reasons I'm so aware of it was because, to be honest, it was a complete disaster raising me. There was no discipline in my house. There was battles between my parents. Luckily there was no like extreme abuse that I had to deal with, but there was a lot of pressure, a lot of religious pressure. And so a lot of things to where I like broke inside of that, where it was survival was either you figure this out a different way, which was defiance for me, and kind of take a different path. But because of that, I've been able to look at my kids and create something completely different to say, no, why would I discipline them? Well, why would I even give my kids a curfew? Why? If that's the behavior that they're going to have, that's the behavior I train them with. If I did, if I wanted to them to be home in bed by 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock every day, whatever, then I should have shown them that myself, and I don't. I'm the type where I can stay up and for nights, like work, pull all nighters and work and sleep in and do all this stuff. So when my kids do it, I'm like, what if, like, I can suggest, but I can't tell them this is how they have to live, because I mean, I'm just not a hypocrite. I don't believe in it. It drives me crazy. And as fast as way your kids will discredit you. Like, they know you better than anybody. So they have all the stops. They may not be saying it to you, but trust me, if somebody's going to discredit you, your kids will do it faster, because when they're young, not only do they have all your knowledge and gaining all your knowledge, they have their own knowledge, plus they're connected to God a lot better than you are, because they have less junk that they've gone through in life. So
What about what about expectations we place on ourselves?
yeah, that's it. I mean, most of them are probably there because of how our parents dealt with it, because of our parents' expectations. How many people are going through school and don't even, like, they think they have to go on this path of life that isn't even for them. It's just been programmed into them that this is what they should do. And again, I'm gonna go back to kids on this, because like I was told I had to go to school, I had to do all these things. And truth be told, I remember this day. It's one very clear memory, where my sixth grade English teacher told me I had to graduate or I would never make any money. And about, I don't know, within a couple minutes, 60, 90 seconds, I'd already factored in like that. They're like, wait a minute, I'm spending essentially 9 hours a day between riding the bus and getting to school and being at school and then going home in this school. Now, keep in mind, at middle school, I was, 12 or 13. I'd already bought my first pickup at this point. And I started working on it. I was doing professional auto body work, like after hours, summertime, whatever. And so my mind instantly went like, I was detailing cars for my cousin, where he would pay me like 30, $35. And I'm like, if I spent 8 hours, a full 8 hours, not just part time, but went full time doing what I'm doing now, I would make more money than you crazy bitch. Like that's what went through my head. So instantly now school is garbage to me. So, and this happened throughout school over and over again. But now everybody's telling me I have to go. And so I'm just like, whatever, doing my thing. So when my son, he comes along and I start seeing him do the same thing, he's just mentally, he's discredited his entire school. Like, he can go make money, he can do things, and I'm watching him begin to procrastinate. So I went and I said, "Hey, why don't you just test out early?" He's like, "Oh, I would never drop out." I was like, "You're dropping, like, testing out early is something that most people can't do. Most people can't test out, get a job, and make a living this early in life. You can." He's like, thought about it a little bit. And he's like, "Yeah, that's kind of a good idea." So that's, I was like, "Yeah, do that," and that's what he did. And people are like, "Well, wait, that is a good idea." Like, for something that's not gonna, like, you're not gonna be a lawyer, you're not gonna become a doctor. He's an entrepreneur. He makes commission. He makes good money. Why wouldn't I have him do it? Like, if he could do it at 12, I would be like, go do it. And honestly, from my own previous knowledge, like if I had that support, there's a good chance I could have done it. But I had a different path, a different learning experience that is mine. But I am very pro give them what they need early. Otherwise, they procrastinate. And I learned to procrastinate better than anybody because I was highly skilled. I mean, at 12 years old, I was doing professional auto body work, taking customers, turning out some of the best jobs in my area. At 12 years old. So, I don't need any money. So I'd make a little money, get lazy, and then spend it all. And then, oh, I need money. And I just had this bouncing back and forth until I got a real girlfriend. And I was like, oh shit, I have to like actually take care of something here. So yeah, it's but that expectation that I had an expectation that I had to do what my parents said. I had an expectation that I needed to, live in this box that other people put me in, even though I was still defiant, but I didn't know that I could just kind of tell them all off and be like, I'm going to go do this. I didn't know that. I didn't have the confidence. I was really self-conscious, honestly, as teen and growing up until, I mean, mainly, I think the confidence thing broke when I hit the weight room hard as in high school and then changed my physical body and everything. So there's a, there's a lot to that, stop, like, just get rid of, like, throw out the expectations. Start finding what guides you, start looking inside deep and start healing the childhood or previous or whatever stuff that's going on. And some stuff is generational, not so much. I don't want to get too far into the craziness of it, but your DNA, energy is energy and it does transfer. There's also stuff that, like, chemicals and toxins that transfer, but like biologically, physically. And so there are things to consider here, that if your parents have some stuff going on, there's a good chance you probably have some stuff going on because you've picked it up over the years. And you can change it 100%. You can completely change your life. You have the power to do so. But you can't do it if you have these expectations of who you should be, and it's not who you want to be. So that's a key thing to me. But
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that for me, I think it's when I hear all this and I'm just thinking about expectations, I just see that it's probably, for me, like I think we should just drop the expectations on other people and on ourselves and instead love and support and appreciate not just other people but also ourselves, and guide and make the best decisions and just keep getting better every day, guiding our kids to make good decisions, guiding ourselves to make good decisions, trusting ourselves and our abilities to make good decisions, and just loving and appreciating and supporting others and ourselves. And I think when we can truly love ourselves and let go of the expectations, um, then we can, it feels like freedom.
yeah, and I also think that, like, one of the big things to do is ask the right questions, right? Like, if you find yourself with expectations, or if I want to know maybe even what hers might be, ask the questions. Like, if something's happening that I don't understand, why not just ask? Why not just say, hey, are does this you enjoy this, or do you want this? Or and then also be willing to speak what you do desire, or say, okay, well, this is what I expect. So do you want to negotiate that, or say your side of it? I always promoted my kids negotiating, even if it was a no. I was like, no, if you want to negotiate, go for it. Like, I think that's great. So, and because like, I'm not that smart. I've listened, I've gained some knowledge of whatever, but I'm not so smart that my kids, that, like I said, they have my knowledge, their mom's knowledge, the world's knowledge, their own knowledge, all this stuff. Maybe they could bring me something. Maybe they could bring something to my table that I could see differently, and that would be a blessing. But if I'm too stuck in my own ways of saying, I expect you to show up this way because of why? Why? Ask the questions. So I'll always ask the questions, why do I expect what I expect? And any negative feeling, just investigate it.
I don't really like expect you to show up any way than other than who you are. And then it's up to me to decide whether I'm good with it or not.
Yeah. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, right? But usually it does. And that's why it works. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave you with that, because I mean we could go on and on, but there's, if you want to actually kind of be able to investigate this and dig into it, we have a membership where you can come in there, and sometimes we'll dig into it, or you can ask questions. You can also leave comments, ask questions, and if you like this, share with other people, tell people about it, subscribe to it, do whatever you want with it. But like, hopefully this has given you some way of thinking a little different, or asking the question, or kind of challenging some of those expectations, so that if you do want to expect it, then you can actually properly assess it and change it and get it right. Because a lot of times what you seek and what you want is as simple as a simple conversation. But if you expect it and you don't speak about it from your feelings, what happens is then you get angry and discontent. And when you have discontent, you cause rage, and then rage happens, and then what you wanted actually becomes a problem. And then even if you get it at that point, now you have an issue that is always going to be an issue. Whereas if you humble yourself enough to say, okay, I'm triggered. I expected this. Why am I not getting it? Even if she had that or I had that, and I was like, hey, I expected this to happen. Why did you do this? And then she explains it to me. I'm doesn't change that I'm angry, right? Because I'm still like, something internal with me is going on, but I can at least understand it conceptually now. And guess who the problem is? Me. And so then I have to look at that and be like, is this a deal breaker, or is this, or how do I view this, or what can be done, and be willing to either work with it or be done with it. It doesn't matter. So that you just be willing to kind of ask yourself the questions, to dig in, or come join us, get with the other community where other people are willing to ask real questions, instead of just give you the pat on the back. Oh yeah, he should have done that for you, or oh, she should have done, or your kids need to listen to you, or they should respect you because God said so, or shut up. Like, no, like,
Everything you just said there was like expectations
yeah,
and how like and it was this just reminded me how much like expectations do lead to frustration
yeah,
in like every area. Like, I mean,
everywhere.
even if I were to do something for you, expecting something from you in return, and I didn't get what I was expecting in return, like it's just
especially
negative. It's just
especially something that I've never done before. Like, if you did something to get something from me I've never done before, that would be insanity. It would be
Mhm.
like expecting something you've never seen me do, but you think because you did something you would get it.
This is how I think a lot of us live our lives until we kind of wake up and stop trying to get love from everybody and please everybody by doing what we think they expect of us.
Yeah. Like, one thing we know at this point, doesn't mean we're perfect at it, is that if we want love from other people, then we should expect to love ourselves the most.
Hmm.
Because when you love yourself the most, when you're doing the things for yourself the most, then you attract it, and you attract more of that. And that's just a basic law of attraction. What you put out, you get back. And so if I spend hours a day working on myself for myself, what do you think everybody else is going to do? They're either going to remove themselves from my life because they don't match, or they're also going to love me just as much as I love myself.
This is, I know I don't know what time it is right now. We're getting going
Yeah.
late on time, but I will say that, the expectations I put on myself when I was married and just trying to do what I thought I was supposed to do in order to be a good what I thought from my programming, what life was supposed to look like for me, and all these expectations I put on myself to be a mom a certain way as a mom, a wife. I had expectations of how I had to be around my mother-in-law and around, then go to work and just I had to all these different things I was expecting of myself in order to get something in return. I was expecting a return by the way I was showing up and to everybody, and I was not getting what I thought, what I wanted from everybody, which it was really hard to, I guess, please me. I was trying to please everybody, but constantly feeling like I wasn't pleasing. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
it does. And so I think we just better end it at this. It says, one of the most powerful things that we do when we help people with the expectations is we actually support them in walking away from negativity sometimes, because a lot of times people feel like they're expected to do something out of obligation that's false. And so when we can kind of step in and say, look, let's break this down, we break it down and show them, we support them in it, and they free themselves from that negativity. It's a really big deal. And just being in conversations with people willing to have these conversations moves life forward, and it benefits everybody, and you can also get the benefit from it. So I hope you've got something positive from this that you can take and actually go apply, because that's what we prefer, is that you take one little thing from this, apply it to something so that it benefits your life. So leave it at that. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next round.